Hello, my friends. Our topic is star signs in dating apps. There are so many apps out there for dating, also just for compatibility reports, also astrologers giving interpretations of your sign. We have very compelling, strong evidence that the theory that most astrologers are using for zodiac sign compatibility is wrong. Not only is it wrong, it might even be backwards. What they're telling you is good might actually be slightly bad. It's definitely not good. It's anywhere from having no effect whatsoever to actually being opposite to what you want. I'm going to show you the statistics. Over the past, this has been 4 or 5 days, I've been analyzing this data very carefully, put it into this R statistical program, wrote these things called R scripts, analyzed it in great detail to see exactly what's going on, and it has made this very, very clear. And this is useful. If you use a dating app, or a friend of yours or a family member uses a dating app, and suppose they're a Gemini, and they say, oh, this Cancer, Gemini Cancer, they're just not good. That's what astrologers say. Please, 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 please. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Forget it. It's a distraction. It's possibly even, like I said, backwards. It's wrong. So if, popular dating apps like Bumble, popular programs like CoStar, all these compatibility reports that you can purchase and astrologers you're talking to, if they're using a lot of the standard information about the part about zodiac signs, we've now confirmed it's wrong. So here's some, popular dating apps that use astrology, but you get the idea. It goes way beyond that. This information is everywhere, and it's wrong. Now, let me tell you what astrologers say, so that you understand what it is they are saying. And if you meet an astrologer who's not using these rules, then we have not confirmed clearly that the rules are wrong. The rules we found that are wrong is the assumption that zodiac signs in the same element are good. This is taken for granted by astrologers, like ABCs of astrology, that if you're a Leo, you are going to have an easier time connecting with someone who is Aries or Sagittarius. They're called fire signs. So here in this picture, we have a Leo guy, a Sagittarius woman. Well, we know he's Leo guy because he looks kind of like a lion. How do we know she's Sagittarian? Well, she's got a bow and arrow. And that's part of the symbol of Sagittarius, which represents the adventuresome spirit. They're both fire signs, and there they are. They look entranced by each other, and that's what astrologers will say is more likely with same element, fire to fire. Of course, there's way, way more than astrology, but if you have that little boost, that will help. Actually, it's false. That's what astrologers say. That's what's false. This is almost all astrologers know this. Almost all of them use this, and the recent research confirms it is wrong. So it's more likely to happen if you take a Leo and Sagittarius, is they're not necessarily going to become entranced. Here they look, like they're trying to look very pensive, trying to figure something out. Just as likely between Leo and Sagittarius as it is between any other signs, and possibly even slightly more inclined to this. Opposite of what astrologers say. I'm going to show you the results of the research. What it shows is quite fascinating, but I want to get the ideas across first. So the theory is wrong. Using modern research methods, we have determined with great confidence that not only is the theory wrong, but it might even be backwards. It might be slightly, very, very slightly negative, more difficult to connect. Very, very slight. But it's so slight I wouldn't worry about it. So really you should just ignore this zodiac sign stuff. Okay, and it's definitely not good. Absolutely not good. And here on the right, I've shown an image for Aries. Aries is this sign on the left that I have a red circle around. And I've drawn a green triangle to the Leo and Sagittarius. These signs of the same element form a triangle, and they're supposed to flow nicely together. and people are drawn to each other, and they are more likely to bond. The blue triangle are the air signs, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. They're also fairly good with Aries. And Libra has a special status because it's also opposite Aries. And some people say opposite signs attract. So these are the good signs. The green ones, Leo, Sag. Also good are Gemini, Aquarius, and Libra. And Libra might be as good as the trine signs, according to some astrologers. But definitely the trine signs are good. I mean, they're the best. Leo, Sag, and Aries. They go together. So that's the idea. Now, these other signs are pink or red. The red ones, Capricorn and Cancer, well, there's sort of a hard edge connection between those signs, but they're all cardinal. They have something in common. It's not all bad. The really bad signs are the ones next to Aries. That would be Pisces and Taurus. That's called a semi-sextile relationship. These semi-sextile signs, the ones next to Aries, they have nothing in common. They have nothing in common with the element. Aries is a fire sign. Pisces and Taurus are, Pisces is water, Taurus is earth. They're called feminine. They're just like very different. One is mutable, the other is fixed. That's called the mode. And Aries is cardinal. They have nothing in common. They just don't connect. Same thing with the two signs next to the sign that's opposite. That's Virgo and Scorpio. Those are called the quincunx signs. So in astrology, the semi-sextile and the quincunx signs have nothing in common, and it's more work. It's not that it's bad, but you're going to have to work to connect. It's just not as easy. So that's the theory. Unfortunately, the theory is wrong. And what I did is I looked at 20,916 couples. I looked at these couples before. I'd made some videos about the findings. I went through it again. I wrote these. I used the R Statistical program to see exactly what's going on. Wrote these R scripts, took data out of another program, put it all together, analyzed it very, very carefully. And what I found out confirms what I thought I was seeing initially, but I analyzed it more carefully, that the trine signs are not inclined to marry each other. These people not only married each other, almost 21,000 married couples, that's almost 42,000 people, but they also have at least one child. And we have the birth date, time, and place of all of the people, the husband, the wife, and the children. Huge amount of data collected by Mikel and Francois Galco in Paris. We have this data. Who is getting drawn together to get married and have children? Not signs that are trying each other. They are not. There's a slight tendency in the data that if you're an Aries, you will be drawn to and you will marry a Pisces, Taurus, Virgo, or Scorpio. Those are the four. Exactly the ones astrologers told you to stay away from. Wow. That's it. Now, why do astrologers have these wrong ideas? And first of all, it's unethical because they're saying things that they don't look at the data, they don't research, they just use their personal opinion, their personal experience and tradition. That's why it's unethical. They're not evidence-based systems in the modern sense. And it is incorrect and often harmful because you're steering people the wrong way. So why did they get this wrong? I think part of it is just that the theory looks so impressive. It looks so beautiful and people can relate to it. And this idea that we're drawn to people who are similar it just makes sense. There's going to be at least 2 videos in this a series of videos because I have a lot to cover. And in the next video, maybe there'll be 3 videos, but probably 2. In the next video, towards the end of this, I will share with you the results from psychological research, which shows some similarities to what we find in the astrology. Bottom line is this. It feels right, seems like people are drawn to someone who has a similar kind of energy, but they're different. Aries, Leo, and Sag are also very different. It's the right balance of having a little bit of connectivity and yet interesting enough to be different, but it just is not true. And here's what I found. If you're an Aries, as I said, at least these married couples in Paris, France, what they did, and I'll talk later about this, but I think it's fairly reasonable to generalize from that, to say that that data does generalize a little bit to today. It's not that different of a culture, is that if you're an Aries, there might be a very slight tendency for you to be attracted to Pisces, Taurus, Virgo, or Scorpio, and for that to be long-lasting and stable. These were stable marriages, they at least to the point where they had children. There's also a connection between Venus-Mars, so the husband's Venus to the wife's Mars, and vice versa, the wife's Venus to the husband's Mars. So I put this as Venus-Mars or Mars-Venus, meaning if you're putting the husband's Venus to wife's Mars or husband's Mars to wife's Venus, either way, they're either in the same sign or opposite sign. Now that's a little more consistent with astrological thinking, but the trines are not there. The trines don't show up with any of the planet combinations I looked at. So that basic fundamental rule is wrong. And I got a problem when we did the statistical analysis. The probability of these connections in this database is less than 0.02. So that's, appears to be fairly impressive. However, this is exploratory research we're modeling the data. I like to have a much better p-value than that. So in this kind of exploratory research where we're doing knowledge discovery, we're looking at data, we're finding similar themes, I have 3 criteria that I use. One is an elegant formula. Elegant means simple rules, consistent. Sun, Sun, or Moon, Moon, semi-sextile, or quincunx. Simple, straightforward. Venus, Mars, either way, either his Venus to her Mars or his Mars to her Venus. Conjunction or opposition, those are called alignments. Fairly simple, direct formula. It's elegant. Check. Good. Is it theoretically reasonable? No. According to astrologers, it's not. Signs that are semi-sextile and quincunx should not be more favorable with the sun signs and moon signs. However, later we're going to look at some of the research in psychology, which suggests maybe this does make sense. So theoretically, I don't know. It's not terrible. We weren't anticipating it. And then the third thing is, what p-value did we get? And 0.02 in this kind of research is not good enough. We want less than 0.001. So it's not really, it's more suggesting that there's no connection at all. Signs do not matter. However, keep in mind this also. The control group, we compare the people who are married to people who are not married, is extremely conservative. The control group is more similar to the actual married couples than you would have randomly, because what I did is to make a control group, I took a husband and wife and I swapped them. I had made believe the husband was married to somebody else's wife and his wife was married to somebody else's husband, and I picked the ones closest in date. So the control group people have a very similar birth date, often within weeks of the actual spouse. This means that the Venus, Mars, and Sun signs are often the same, and you're not getting as much variability as you would in a purely random sense. What I'm saying is, from a research method standpoint, the control group is artificially homogeneous with the experimental group. Sorry to use such fancy words, but I am a data scientist. I'm trained in it. I'm looking at all these factors. The bottom line, without all that fancy terminology and stuff, is that there's more work that could be done, that these results of P less than 0.02 are very conservative. If we do the control group differently, also, I didn't look at Venus. I didn't look at Mars. What if they're semi-sextile and quincunx to each other? That would be consistent with the sun, the moon. It would increase our p-value. There's a lot of things I didn't look at. There's also a thing called the draconic zodiac. Of course, there's a sidereal zodiac. There's so many things to look at, and the patterns I pulled out may not be the best ones. So more work might give us even better results. As it is right now, what we can say with tremendous confidence is that what astrologers are telling you is wrong. It's wrong. For the purpose of marriage, romance and marriage, same element is not helpful. So it's just wrong. Now, here's the results. I did something called a chi-square goodness of fit. Again, if you're not into statistics, don't worry about that. But just to let you know that I had the married couples, I have the control group, this very conservative control group. And the only thing I checked for was sun. It says 30. That means on average 30 degrees. It's the sign next to it. Maybe this is not the best way to say it. I should just say, well, I wanted to convey semi-sextiles. There's a sign next to it. Anyway, sun 30 sun means sun is semi-sextile. This is sun quincunx sun, moon semi-sextile moon, moon quincunx moon, Venus conjunct Mars, Venus opposition Mars, Mars conjunct Venus, which is different from Venus conjunct Mars, because that would be the husband's Venus to the wife's Mars. This is husband's Mars to wife's Venus, and then Mars 180 Venus, and then the total. And this is the ratio. You want the ratio to be above 1, which means the married couples have more of these sign relationships than the control group. And you'll see they're only slightly above 1, 1.01, 1.00, 1.03, 1.04, rounded off 1.03. They're about like 2 to 3% higher than the control group. That's only a slight amount. And then we run this statistical test called a chi-square, which you take the total number of people in these tables, and if I run just the sun 30 to sun, I get a chi-square value of 0.539, which is totally random. In other words, nothing. If you look at only sun next to sun, it's not statistically significant. Same with sun quincunx sun. The only one that's statistically significant is moon quincunx moon. And the moon is showing up more because the moon is changing signs faster. Might be the reason. But the moon quincunx moon is less than 0.05. The total, if you take all of these and you total them up, you get a p-value of 0.015. That's the p less than 0.02 that I mentioned earlier. Okay, that's some of the nerdy details. If you're not interested in nerdy details and you just want to know, the juicy stuff like who should I marry or who should I date, ignore zodiac signs. Just ignore it. It's not telling you who is going to be good. If there is even a slight effect, it's the opposite of what astrologers tell you. Trines are not helping. It's things like semi-sextiles and quincunxes in the sun signs and moon signs. So that's some of the nerdy little details. And again, the p-value for the entire astro signature, the entire formula, is 0.015, which in other words is less than 0.02. And only that one aspect, moon quincunx moon, is less than 0.05. And that moon has fairly low p-values, and that might be again because of this greater variability of moon. And if we do another kind of control group where people don't necessarily have to be so close in age, we'll probably get a bigger spread and maybe a better, we definitely would get more information about what's really going on with this data. There's no end to analyzing data and looking at options and ways of looking at it. Okay, and by the way, if you're a YouTube member, I have a membership, and if you're a member, the R script that does the statistical analysis on your YouTube member page, I added the link to that. So you have that if you ever wanted to go into this research. Okay, and to give you just one more, this is it. This is the final one. I'm not going to bore you to death with tiny, minuscule details, but here's the list of every sign combination I looked at. I looked at sun, sun, moon, moon, Venus to Mars, both ways. And here's all of the, and sun, moon, sun, moon, sun, moon, and Venus, Mars. And I looked at whether the signs are next to each other, that's semi-sextile, or are they 2 signs away, which is the sextile, 3 signs away is square, 4 signs away is quincunx, 5 signs away is opposition. Looked at all those, looked at the proportion of how much more the married people have that than the unmarried people. And this is, I sorted it, put it in a sorted order. So in other words, the aspect that showed up the most of nearly 21,000 married people was moon, quincunx, moon. About 3.5% above average. And these ones in yellow and have an asterisk, these are the ones I picked out and I said are the sign combinations that lead to marriage. I picked, and as I said before, an elegant formula. I've got moon, quincunx, moon, moon, semi-sextile, moon. I've got sun, quincunx, sun, sun, semi-sextile, sun. That's the consistency. Venus to Mars conjunct, Mars to Venus, Venus, Mars conjunct, Venus, Mars opposition, Venus, Mars opposition, which is down here, and then Venus, Mars opposition up here. Those combinations are the ones I picked out. I did not include Sun, Moon, semi-sextile, or Sun, Moon opposition, because if Sun is opposition Moon, to be elegant, I might expect Moon opposition Sun, but that's below 1.0. I didn't want to use anything below 1.0. These are technical details. I hope that didn't bore you too much, but this is how we analyze data, extract out of it relevant information. You have to be an astrologer, you have to understand the theory, you have to feel it and build this model for what looks reasonable. Then I run the chi-square on the results of these things and I get the answer. Using the R statistical software, you can do all of these steps. Okay, now, a few more things. These married couples got married in the first half to the middle of the 20th century. I forget the exact dates. In France, attraction to a partner may be different 60 or 70 years ago in France than it is today. So there's a question, in research, can you generalize? What is the population? The population here is people in France, specifically Paris, some 60 to 70 years ago on average. Can we use that? Does that generalize to, say, people today? I live in the United States, so it's a different time, different place. Well, I want to put this in perspective. No research is perfect. If you want perfect research, then don't go into science of any kind, and especially not social sciences. Run to the hills, because no research is perfect. You do the best you can with what you have available. That's what an evidence-based practice is about. We have actual solid data that these people are drawn to each other and they do not fit the rules. I would suspect, there's an attraction between these people. They're drawn together. There'll be some differences, but in astrology, we say that these are fundamental forces of life, the sun and moon, the Venus and Mars. Also, Carl Jung was looking at sun-moon relationships in Switzerland a long time ago. So, I think these ideas are fundamental principles that should work. It's still a Western-type society, etc., and we're getting no support at all. This kind of controlled research, clearly done, is what we need to have in a modern profession. It's just telling us much more than people's personal anecdotal beliefs. Now, I thought this was going to go in a yeah. Let me put this second part in a second video. So I have 2 videos in the series. This one's 25 minutes. The next one might be 15 or 20 minutes on how what we see in the astrology is similar to some of the discoveries being made in psychology. So it's a shock, maybe, for a big surprise, that if there's any connection in zodiac signs, and again, we can do more research. We can look at the Venus, the Mars. We can look at the draconic signs. There's so much more to look at. Research is never ending. Maybe that P less than 0.02 could get better and better and better. Maybe new data could be collected. There might be some kind of zodiac sign connection. If there is, it looks nothing like what astrologers say. If anything, it's opposite to what they're saying. If someday, through additional research and refinement and a much more complex formula using additional things, we find that zodiac signs do work, what we're finding so far agrees with what they're finding in psychology. I'll discuss that in the next second video in this 2-part series. Thank you very, very much for listening, my friends. God bless. Namaste.